chickens and pigs can eat a lot of the same stuff that we do. But if we try to eat what a cow eats or what a stocker calf eats or what a grass-finished beef animal eats, we would starve to death.
Just to help the consumers understand, help the average listener understand, when you're buying chicken or pork, that's 100% grain-fed animal. Pasture-raised chickens, still getting grain-fed. Pasture-raised pork, still getting fed grain. They just can't live on it. So they're omnivores.
So we want to hit those specific endpoints, and we want to do it as efficiently as possible. And we want to select for animals that are very efficient at converting feed, which is grain and protein. They get a balanced diet that's, I promise, more balanced than 99% of the people that are listening to this podcast. And so that conversion is very important.
It wasn't until 1980 that the whole beef carcass became worth as much per pound or more than the pork carcass. So trends in American consumption and production. So several things happened there. We got vertical integration heavily influencing the chicken business in the 70s and then the pork business in the 80s.
So you wake up in the morning with the sun, wondering where you've been. In the night when a memory shines brighter through your every tear. You can touch it if you reach her, but you can't reach her every day.
Hey, welcome to the Fenceline. Your host, Matt Hamilton, with my co-host, always the smartest man in the room, Dr. Dusty Abney. How are you today, sir?
Always, sometimes, at least 60% of the time.
Well, when I'm in the room, so when it's just you and me, you're definitely the smartest guy in the room. Of course, we got Taylor over there. He may be the smartest guy in the room.
He's the one that knows how to.
And then your daughter's the smartest woman in the room. So
she ain't so bad sometimes.
Also the only woman in the room at this moment, but I shouldn't have pointed that out. So we come out of Magic Woman.
Now he's being pedantic. You got it from hanging around me too much.
My buddy Brad Goodbroug's in her Magic Woman. I've got a great wife. You got a Magic Woman in my life.
I should probably start singing Magic Woman on my wife instead of Devil Woman.
Yeah, that's Marty Robbins. That's the difference.
That's a classic, though.
Yeah, that's good. Well, if we could get permission, maybe if we could use Marty Robbins.
I think Marty's dead.
I'm sure there's an estate, someone we could write to. I don't know.
Might be able to do that. Right. You know Marty Robbins raced in NASCAR for a while?
What?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
No.
Like NASCAR.
Back when it was like fist fights and real NASCAR. Wow. I didn't know that.
Trivia for today.
There you go. Pedantic and trivial. There we go. That's what we like to be. All things here at the Fenceline. Well, last week was Screwworm, and man, that was a lot. That was a lot of information, a lot of things, and a lot of comments. People, thank y'all for the comments. Keep them coming. Comments, questions, send them to us. Let us know what it is you want to hear us talk about. So, one of the things that we've talked about since before as we started, what are ideas for this show? The consumer, their misconceptions, their misunderstandings, their, just not understanding, misunderstandings, lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. One of the things that just really stands out to me is people don't really understand how long it takes to make a steak, and we talked about that. But we really want to show you today, we really want to dive in on how long it takes the life cycle to produce a steak and or produce a cow that can produce a calf that can produce a steak versus our competition in the protein industry, the animal protein industry, chicken and pigs.
And our partners.
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm old school. It's us versus them. It's us. I work for a guy. I have
noticed on the menu at Local Yokel things other than beef.
I work for a guy. He said you get anything you want for lunch. He's buying. But if you ordered chicken, is your last day. We weren't chicken boys. We didn't wear chicken boy hats. Didn't have chicken boy boots. Didn't have chicken boy belts. We didn't raise chicken. And by God, we didn't eat chicken. And I said, Mr. Levins, I don't even like chicken. He said, that's what I
One of my favorite customers I ever worked with in South Texas, I went to meet him the first time, and we went to a place called Taco Tony's in Eagle Lake, Texas.
Oh, boy.
And everybody ordered, and I ordered. I like cheese enchiladas. I just do. And he said, do you think you came down here to talk to a dairyman? And I said, how about if I get one beef and one cheese? That make you happy?
Well,
I might have paraphrased what he really told me.
Yeah, you
context.
cleaned it up for the kids. Yeah, but we have a burger here. I call it the agricultural support burger. So it's the Hamilton burger. So I got a bun on top and bottom. That's your wheat
farmers,
guys,
yeah.
right? All right. I've got it's a Wagyu beef patty. Ours are beef patties, right? Beef guys. It's got pork sausage on it. All right. Got jalapeno cheddar sauce. It's got bacon on it. All right. They got onions. That's your truck farmers. That's a different type of agriculture. And then, jalapenos, right? And so I feel like it's the whole agricultural industry.
the whole food pyramid in there.
Everything you need right there in one burger. Throw a little ketchup on the French fries on the side. I got the tomato guys and the Idaho Spud guys. We're supporting the whole agricultural network right
Doesn't
there.
even matter which direction
One
the
burger.
pyramid faces.
No,
you got it knocked out.
flip it upside down. We don't care. But but on that one burger, we've got all of the things represented. You can put an egg on it, have the chicken represented. But I know you. This is a great discussion point for you. So help the consumer understand. They just don't understand beyond the Fisher Price barnyard barn, all the different types of cows and the different types of chickens we try to educate on. Help us understand the vast difference in time that it takes to produce a steak versus a chicken breast.
Well, I'm going to go back to my comfort zone, which is the digestive tract, which I think I've said
Not a
before
lot
that
of people's comfort
when
zone.
my daughter Amelia was younger, when she was 5 or 6 years old, somebody asked her one time, "What does your daddy do?" And she said he talks to people and looks at poop. And I kind of got upset about that, but then, it's the truth. It's what I did, because the digestive tract is really where everything happens that I was interested in as a professional and still am. When I think about that, I think about chickens and pigs, like people, are monogastrics. They have one simple stomach. One of these days we'll dive deeper into this topic, but because of that,
Yes, we will.
they need a different diet than cattle. Cattle are ruminant animals, and they have several stomachs and a true stomach. And so to get down to brass tacks, what that really means is that chickens and pigs can eat a lot of the same stuff that we do. But if we try to eat what a cow eats, or what a stocker calf eats, or what a grass-finished beef animal eats,
Mother cow eats.
or a calf before it gets to the feed yard, we would starve to death. Because a cow, a ruminant animal, including sheep and goats, or an elephant for that matter, or elk or deer, they can go graze on less nutrient-dense foods, consume a higher volume of them, and the microflora, the bacteria, the protozoa, the fungi, all those little bugs in the rumen.
Living organisms is a live universe. It's a universe of microorganisms
Yeah.
in that rumen.
More organisms in 1 milliliter of rumen fluid than there are people on the face of the earth. So
Point for the day, right?
you can put things into those animals, feed those animals things that chickens and pigs can't consume. And we talk a lot about these days about grain fed and how we grow all this grain that's feeding cattle in the United States. And we'll talk in a future episode about greenhouse gas emissions and that sort of thing, and tell the truth about that too. But probably the bulk of grain that goes into protein production in the United States is going to go into the monogastric animals, because it's what they have to eat in order to make that protein to feed America like we want to be fed. So I think that's an important point to make from the outset, that we have to feed that grain to get the efficiency that we're going to talk about that chickens and pigs have. They have to have the grain, and the cattle, it's semi-optional. That depends on how quickly we want to turn
And
it down.
I will tell a little farmer's market. I was starting a farmer's market, and boy, first off, when you're the beef guy at the farmer's market, the vegetarians have to come talk to you. It's in the vegetarian handbook. They got to come let you know they're vegetarian and why they're vegetarian.
Do you know how to know if somebody has a PhD, runs marathons, does CrossFit, or is a vegetarian?
Wait 3 minutes and they'll tell you.
They'll just tell you. Just wait.
Yeah, just wait. So this one lady came with me at farmer's market one day. She said, "I want you to know something. I only eat chicken. You guys raising these cows, you're wasting all of that land raising cows. You could be doing something better with it. Those chickens, I know they don't have the best life, but they live in those houses. They don't waste a lot of land raising these chickens." And I said, "Well, ma'am, let me break down some walls for you here. Let me help you with your misunderstandings and cure your ignorance. First off, that chicken, they do live in those 20,000 square foot chicken houses, but there's no food in there for them that doesn't get hauled in. So they live 100% on grains. So all those corn fields and soybean fields you see, that's not for corn chips and soybean oil. That's not for tofu. We're not raising tofu and corn chips exclusively. That is feed that's going in animal production. So when you buy a pound of chicken, that 100% of that chicken, 100% of that pork was from grain. They converted grain into protein, and that's an efficient. That's great. I'm supportive of that. But I want you to understand, when you buy a pound of beef, worst case scenario, a pound of grain finished grocery store beef, at least 40 to 50% of that weight came from converting grass to protein.
Over the lifetime of that.
Over the lifetime of the animal, at least it was close to half of the weight gained on that animal, anywhere from 40 to 60%. I know when cattle go on feed and different programs, but let's just call it half is from taking the rangelands of America. I challenged her, said, this land that we're wasting, I would love for you to go out to West Texas, Central New Mexico, and I'm going to put you in the gardening. I'm going to have you go out there and grow some asparagus and some kale and lettuce on 17 inches of rain, and it gets 100 degrees in the summer and negative 20 in the winter. And let me go out there and let you help us fix our errant ways of raising these wasteful animals out here on this land that could be better producing, better crops for humans. So I really want people to understand, like, when we're taking grass. First thing, we're grass farmers. We produce grass. And my dad always said we have a choice. What we're going to do with that grass? Sell hay, cut it and bale it. Or we have this amazing animal that works 24 hours, 7 days a week, that converts it into highly digestible, dense protein that tastes good, called a cow. So that's what we do. We take forages that you and I would waste away on and die on, and we turn into food. And even a grain-fed cow, half of that protein came from converting. So just to help the consumers understand, help the average listener understand, when you're buying chicken or pork, that's 100% grain-fed animal. Pasture-raised chickens, still getting grain-fed. Pasture-raised pork, still getting fed grain. They just can't live on it. So they're omnivores. So throw it back to you, Dr. Dusty, with the single stomach versus the multi-stomach, and back to the efficiencies.
Well, and I think something really interesting that you brought up there, when you think about a cow on the range out there, especially as you get further west and you get lower and lower rainfall, it's really not a big deal, and it's really common for cattle out there to walk a mile between water. And even if you had the free-range chickens out there, which, by the way, are fed quite a bit of grain too, because there's not enough grasshoppers to feed that many chickens in most operations.
They are.
You think about that animal is out there harvesting their own feed in that scenario as well. Now, when we feed hay, that's a little bit different. When they go into the feedlot, we're going to bring them their feed. But in the first episode we did, we talked about the different segments and how many people are involved and what animals are involved to get those animals to market. When we're in that cow, calf, and stocker segment, those animals are self-harvesting most of that feedstuffs. And when you look at chickens and pigs, they tend to be more intensive. Takes more inputs. It takes more people focused on what they're trying to get done, whereas cattle, to a certain extent, take a little bit better care of themselves out there. We don't generally worry about hawks carrying a cow off.
Everything eats chicken.
Yeah.
My wife has chickens. Everything eats chicken.
Raccoons, foxes.
I did learn this. The easiest way to kill a chicken?
Own one?
This works for my wife every time. She says, that is my best chicken. That chicken will be dead in 48 hours.
It's a limited time offer for him.
They can't handle the pressure.
The pressure. Well, that's always the calf that falls over dead too. He's always your best calf.
Yeah, always. Anyway, so it takes a lot more. They're more of a guarded environment. They're more contained. Chickens and pigs are more contained, and they have to have all their resources hauled to them. Well, and we've very intensive.
We've selectively bred those animals that way too. We talked about a couple episodes ago about the difference between a Holstein cow and a beef cow, and how selection pressure on those traits has caused basically a different animal to evolve. So when we look at chickens and pigs, we've got animals. Now there are, I think they call them grazing pigs, but there are pigs that roam over bigger areas. And Lord knows we've got enough feral pigs that do pretty well on their own out there in the countryside. But when we talk about chickens and domestic pigs, domestic chickens, domestic pigs, domestic chickens can't really fly.
So,
You know,
all right. So those of you that have backyard laying chickens, or you've seen chickens, you've seen the red Rhode Island Reds or the beautiful black and white Barred Rocks. Okay, those are layer hens. Those are kind of heritage breeds layer hens. Most of your layers are a white leghorn. So that's foghorn leghorn, white chicken, right, with orange reddish legs. That's
I
your
love when
layer.
our reference is Looney Tunes. That makes me
Well, I
really
mean,
happy.
everybody. I mean, foghorn leghorn. I mean, that's Americana right there. So on the meat side, it's a Cornish cross. It's a Cornish cross. They've been selectively bred. And for my guys that raise pasture-raised chickens, they raise this same breed of chicken. They come out basically the same hatcheries. They raise the same chicken. They're not raising heritage breed. These chickens only ever live to be about 6 to 8 weeks old. Your commodity chickens are 6 to 8 weeks old.
For broiler
Chickens. These things, whether you raise them on pasture, we raised some at my house last year, they can barely walk. By the time they're so breast heavy, they just fall forward. They kind of just crawl around, walk around. So this is not the chicken that you're seeing in your perfect mind's eye.
Well,
this is a chicken that's been bred to produce meat for 60, 80 years, maybe 100 years. And selective crossbred, and it's a cross. It's a cross to breed this. So my guys on pasture, I want you to get to the timeline, but I want you to understand the difference in what we do on a pasture-raised bird. Those guys will produce a 4.5-pound carcass bird in 8 weeks. The industry will produce a 6 to 8 pound carcass bird in 6 weeks. So that's
in an indoor
enclosed,
facility,
lighting controlled, temperature controlled environment.
Yeah.
So on the pigs, they are a land race. So they're mostly a white. It's a York cross. They call them mostly a land race, and they've stretched those pigs out. So we talk about we sell a Berkshire, which is a black pig. Has a lot more marbling in it. It's a Wagyu of pigs. So you think about the Durocs, the red, the China Poland spots, all these other breeds of pigs that are out there. That's not the barnyard pigs that you see, even show pigs you see. That's not the pig that they're raising in these barns. And they're genetically, chickens and the pigs, the genetic diversity in them is almost non-existent. So a lot of these facilities, like go tour a pork facility, probably not. You're probably not going to be allowed on the farm.
No.
And if you are, you're probably going to go through either a shower facility, you're going to get suited up, you're going to go through a foot wash, and you may have to wear a respirator.
shower in, shower out.
Because if one of those pigs gets sick, they're genetically 99.99% identical. So if it makes one sick, they're all going to get sick. All right, it's a very controlled environment. Very important people understand. And they've bred those pigs to be the other white meat, the leaner pork. And I don't think they're as good. I think they've stretched that muscle fiber out. Those pork chops are tough. Everyone talks about how great our pork chops are here at Local Yokel. That's because it's not a land-raised pork chop. But that pig was developed to be a leaner pork,
Well, the war on fat, in the
a
70s
wider
and 80s.
pork, right? It doesn't. So I had a lady one day tell me, put chops out. I don't know what that is. That's not a pork chop. I don't know what you're trying to sell here. Pork chops are white, and that's like pink and reddish and tones, and that's, I don't know what you're pulling here, mister, but that's not a pork chop. This lady had never seen a real pork chop, a juicy, tender, has some pink tones and reddish tones to it, well-marbled pork chop. So these, as we're get in, turn this back over to you to talk about the difference in timelines. These are maybe not the animals you see in your childhood books and movies, and that's not the animals being raised for chicken, poultry production, and pork, pig production. These are animals been selectively bred, not genetically modified, but selectively bred for a very specific purpose and to a specific end. And the diversity there is not nearly as diverse as our cow herd. So I want to point that out so American consumers can understand as we get further in this, talking about these very specific animals.
Yeah, and the pigs we raised in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, they had more marbling. They ended up with a lot more fat on their back because that was what was desirable then. One thing that I think it's important for us to get across the big picture is that production agriculture responds to market signals. And so when we had the war on fat in the 70s and 80s, and we saw these low-fat foods, and doctors talked a lot more about saturated fat, and you got to cut all the fat out of your diet. And as we do in American society, the pendulum swung way too far one direction. We did have animals that had a lot of marbling, and we ate a lot of lard, and
So since we go down now, I bought out a herd of large blacks one time, and they're black pigs with huge ears, and their pork loins were small.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They had 3 to 4 inches of back fat.
You never see a pork chop that small these days.
And let me tell you, financially, those pigs tore me up. I mean, because there wasn't enough market for that fat. What pigs used to be, back to late 1800s, early 1900s, they were raised for lard.
Just like we talked about.
We would take food waste, we'd take everything scrap, and we would feed it to those pigs. So because lard was used in everything from cooking with lard to making candles to making soap. It was a desire, making ammunition.
Yeah.
World War I. It was used for everything. So fat was a commodity. Then as we replaced fats with kerosene and coal oil, and we replaced whale blubber, thankfully, with petroleum products, and then we went to, like I say this, the industry evolved, the animal didn't evolve. We selectively bred. The genetic markers are there. We can go back to what we had. But in this amazing creation, we can do things with these animals. But we selectively bred animals 100 years ago to produce fat. And since the 70s, we've been selectively breeding pigs and chickens to be a lean white meat. So that's how the industry has changed. But back to the point of what we're doing today. So that just more insight into.
We chase that in cattle too. You see, if you look at pictures of cattle from the 50s, we call them belt buckle cattle because you can see everybody's standing behind them at the stock show. You can see everybody's belt buckle over the top of them. You get to the 70s, and we've started importing continental cattle. We got Kenyan cattle.
It's like looking over the fence in your neighbor's yard, up here.
Like Wilson on Home Improvement. You can't tell who was in the picture that way. So these market signals are very important to production agriculture, and the consumer votes with their wallet.
100%.
And
we say it in almost every episode.
Because we have to. And so we went too far on lean animals in the 80s and 90s on cattle, and we had bad eating experiences. We had tougher animals. We had animals that weren't as juicy, et cetera, when they got to be steaks on the plate. And now look where we are with these long day cattle. When I got out of grad school, if a pen of calves graded 80% choice, everybody threw their hats in the air, and it was like we won World War II again on that one pen of cattle. Now, if we get any select cattle, somebody dropped the ball, or we had an animal that just didn't do well. We're up to 12 to 17% prime in a pen. Primes used to be this almost mythical thing that happened.
1% prior to in the 80s is 1%. In the 90s up until 2000, it was 3 to 5%. And magically, we've gotten so much better in the last 6 years, digital camera grading. I will say we are doing a lot better job. They're feeding cattle longer, cheaper commodities, more demand for fed beef, fat beef. Future episode, camera grading and splitting up top third, middle third, bottom third. I definitely feel like we've pushed some meat up the chart, but it's a combination of
and genetics
things.
As well.
There's a lot of things, but we are 100% producing much better quality cattle, much better quality beef than we did in the 70s, 80s.
Without a doubt.
Not even close.
Not even close. It's weird. It's like everything else we've talked about. There may be some nuance here.
There may be a little bit.
I want to talk about how we've selected these animals and why we've selected them.
Yeah.
And that comes down to predictability, because predictability is profitability. And if we're going to make what production agriculture in the United States does better than anybody else anywhere in the world, is produce a lot of good quality product, And so the way to do that, and American ingenuity being what it is, we want to do that as efficiently as possible. And pigs and chickens are very efficient. They what we call convert, feed conversion. How many pounds of feed does it take to get a pound of animals? So the most efficient thing we can do that on is
Catfish.
fish. Catfish convert almost 1 to 1. Not exactly. They're a little bit over 1 pound of feed to get a pound of catfish, but fish are just
10%. Like they're like 90% efficient.
they are amazingly
crazy.
efficient. Amazing. I'm talking about a pound of grain into a pound of meat there, or a pound of animal.
Yeah.
Chickens are next up the line there. Chickens are about 1.4 to 2 to 1, somewhere in there. And then pigs are going to be in the 2.5 to 3.5 kind of range there on our production breeds that you were talking about that are made to hit a specific endpoint. So when you said earlier, I want to make sure that we're being clear with people. When you said earlier that if you feed them for too long, they'll fall over forwards, that's because those animals have really been selected to be 42-day birds. They're not to be fed to 8 weeks of age.
Yeah.
You know, that's more the heritage breeds, or that's a pasture-raised animal who's expending calories, walking around, et cetera. So when we talk about these endpoints being 42 days, when we put those chickens into that chicken house, those broilers, we know what time of day that truck is going to come to pick those chickens up 42 days later when those chickens come out. And so we need the genetics. The reason you were talking about those genetics they're not clones. We don't clone animals in production agriculture. We do it for racehorses and people's dogs that
They're
love.
just very, 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 very closely related, like Arkansas.
And there went our 4 listeners in Arkansas.
With my brother-in-law. Oh, we love Arkansas too. Oh yeah, they know they battle it. They're used to it. They're used to it.
Well,
the people in Mississippi, you know, they're the ones you have to slow it down for them. You make fun of them, it just goes over their heads. It's fine.
You remember we're trying to grow the listenership of this podcast.
Well, this will get us some emails. This will get the mailbag
That'll
flowing.
get that happening for sure. I know we both got friends in both those states.
Yes.
So we want to hit those specific endpoints, and we want to do it as efficiently as possible. And we want to select for animals that are very efficient at converting feed, which is grain and protein. They get a balanced diet that's, I promise, more balanced than 99% of the people that are listening to this podcast.
There is that.
And so that conversion is very important, and we probably ought to pop that graphic up.
Yeah. And then tell us about cattle.
Cattle, generally, we're going to see a conversion. Let's start on pasture. If we're on lower quality pasture and those animals, you know, let's say it's the wintertime, they're grazing dormant range, you may be 12 to 14 pounds of grass to get a pound of animal out of that. Not a pound of dressed beef. That's a whole different math calculation. We're talking about live animals on the hoof or on the claw here. If we get those animals onto, let's say we're grazing wheat pasture in the winter and early spring,
High protein.
or we're grazing in the Flint Hills of Kansas, or we're grazing in the Osage of Oklahoma, we may see conversions that are down in the 6, maybe even 5 pounds of dry matter to 1 pound of animal. When we get into the feed yard, that's where we're into, for feed, 4 to 6 pounds of totally mixed rations and TMR to, on a dry matter basis, to 1 pound of animal. So when we talk about conversions in cattle, it's a lot more complex answer than it would be chickens and pigs.
Well, and I'm looking at your graph and I'm seeing you're 6 to 1.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that I am not 6 to 1 on my cattle. I'm probably 8 to 1.
Yeah, because you're feeding a different ration and you have different goals.
Yeah.
And that's going to differ, you know, in the Texas Panhandle, where we have a more grain-based ration versus more byproducts and silage and that sort of thing in the upper Midwest. We're going to have a better conversion in the Panhandle because we're having to haul that grain. The grain's more expensive per pound. We have to get better conversions there to make it all pencil out versus what they might get. So it's a range.
Yeah.
Just like we've talked about 100 times before, biology is not a specific number. I know on that graph that we've got things down to the third decimal point.
Well, I'm going to tell you on this chicken deal, this 1.7 over here, 1.69. So I had a guy that I had him on one of our farms in Oklahoma raising pasture birds for me. And I want to point this out on this chicken deal. Now this is subjective. So a chicken is pretty dialed in, but they're not magic. They're not a magic woman. This guy, so these pasture chicken guys, they only raise pasture raised birds you get them out in April, and you need to be done by the end of September. You need to be off.
You'll have
done.
several turns by then, but you'll
do
that's
like
your
3
season to
turns.
raise
That's your
those birds.
season. And the reason is we don't have propane heaters in these mobile coops.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was getting into harvesting slots. So there was because again, everyone knows when they put chickens on pasture when they're going to be ready, just like this. So we weren't able to he's like, oh, we're going to be fine. We'll do mid-October, right? We had a cool September, cool October. And guess what? The first thing a chicken's going to do is stay warm. So that number went from 1.7 to about 2.5. I had some expensive
That's disastrous
chickens,
on your cost to gain on those chickens.
especially on a organic, non-GMO feed that he was trucking down here from some Amish guys in Ohio. It was the most expensive chicken. I could produce steaks almost efficiently, but that just shows those chickens, those chicken houses, they use a lot of propane in the winter, and they also you'll see a whole lot more chicken houses in Mississippi and Georgia and South Texas than you'll see in Minnesota.
Yeah, and we've seen that growth a lot in the last 10 years or so. Once you learn to recognize what those chicken houses look like as you drive around in the more southern climate.
The chicken wants to be warm first.
Yeah.
Because that is an immature bird. They don't even get really feathered out really good till they're about 4 or 5 weeks old, and then you harvest them at 6.5 weeks on this timeline. So I just want to point out, as we're looking at this, these are all, I could say, ceteris paribus, all things equal, perfect conditions, perfect
Did you just
temperature.
throw Latin down again?
Yeah, we're a Latin-based educational system over at my house. That's showing off that ag econ. They beat ceteris paribus into us. They put that on your diploma. Oklahoma State Agricultural Econ, ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus, you'll all do well. Some of you won't. Some of you will. But if ceteris paribus, you'll all do well.
We get to the end of the episode, we'll be in vino veritas there too. When we get to our whiskey.
Yes, we will. Well, we're they make that would be a brandy if we did in vino veritas. That'd be a wine-based liquor. Yeah. So if we look here, just so you guys can see the difference in, we'll point out the time. So the average chicken is 47. I think did you say 42 days?
46, something like that.
Oh, I think that's in the house. So the chick is probably days old when it goes in.
All those numbers are birth to harvest.
Yeah, birth to harvest.
From the time
great.
they hit the ground until they're going to go to the harvest facility.
And then 185 days from birth to farrow, and then
6 months. Right?
Yeah, and then 600 days. Pretty much 2 years of age, give or take.
Close to it. Yeah.
Close to it.
Especially these days with long-fed cattle.
Right. So, yeah. So you look at that, and Dusty created a great graphic we'll look at later. So now let's look at how many pounds we get off of that. So we're going to get, 4.85 pounds of dressed weight at harvest. And that's not carcass. Is that a dress? Do you put these numbers together? Is that a dress? That's
what I was aiming
weight.
for.
Okay. And then 205 pounds dressed. So that seems like that would be more like a carcass weight maybe on a pig.
That's probably carcass weight on
That's
all
probably
those.
carcass weight. Okay. I would think that 4.85, that might be a little bigger number on chickens. Like I'm seeing 6 a lot. That's I had some I had some relatives in Louisiana that they gave them a big award. They raised a barn of 8-pound carcass chickens.
Man.
And they won a cruise.
It's going to mess up portion size at TGI Fridays of chicken breast.
Yeah, they had to slice those in fourths instead of halves. So, but just to look at, we're gaining 1/10 of a pound a day, a pound a day, a pound and a half a day.
Again, that's an average
long conversion
over
times.
the lifetime.
I am.
Yeah, in the
Over
feedlot,
lifetime.
that calf's going to gain.
Because I know
3
you
to 4
cattle
pounds
feed
a day.
around a pound and a half a day. I'm doing 3 1/4, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This whole life, Jimmy, whole life. Settle down. That's whole life. So, this is amazing to look at the efficiencies and the conversion. I want to point out again, as we look at that 6-to-1 lifetime average conversion, that includes a lot of grass. That includes a lot of non-grain to get there.
And as we talked about in episode 2, I believe, We're also looking at ethanol byproducts. We're looking at byproducts from the high fructose corn industry, from the soybean oil crush industry.
Yeah.
That all goes into that. The amount of usable grain fed to a calf in the last 20 years has probably been cut in half.
And even on feed, they're not 100% grain. Now the pigs and chicken, that's 100% grain diet. They're not getting hay, they're not getting silage, they're not getting roughage. Even on a grain finished animal, take 30 seconds and tell us about from a dry matter basis how much for, because that rumen still has to have those starches.
Yeah, so if we're on a finished ration in the feed yard, the last ration we'll feed them for probably the last 150 to 220 days there, depending on where you are and who your nutritionist is. And I could start about 15 different fist fights on this one topic in about 10
I know
seconds.
6 guys that are the best nutritionists in America.
6 guys who will have
They
7
all told me
opinions
that.
about this.
And that's because I haven't met the other 30.
Yeah. So, on that finished ration, we would have, I think the least you'd see as far as hay inclusion rate, dry matter basis, might be 8 to 10% in the Texas Panhandle. Nobody really feeds them that close anymore. With the byproducts and that sort of thing, that helps a lot because we don't have as much grain for starch overload in the rumen. But if we get in the upper Midwest, we can be, by the time you count silage and hay and everything else, you can be upwards of 20, 25% roughage in that ration. So again, regional differences are there, but we're not just dumping, we call that a John Deere diet, yellow corn, a little green alfalfa hay, and a brown sticky liquid to keep it all stuck together. So I stole that from a couple of nutritionist friends of mine. But
I don't think I've ever heard that.
the John Deere diet.
John Deere diet.
We don't feed cattle that way a lot anymore because there are less expensive ways to feed cattle than there used to be. Now, when COVID happened and the ethanol plants shut down and we'd all become pretty addicted to dried distillers grains and that sort of thing, we all had to learn to feed those corn rations again because we could rail corn anywhere we wanted to take it, but our byproduct stream was gone.
Those young guys started calling and asking these you older guys, how
does this work?
How did y'all do this pre-ethanol?
Yeah.
I don't know how to play this game.
But yeah, roughage is an important part of that diet to keep those animals healthy, to keep them happy.
Why the ethanol plants? What happened? Why they shut the ethanol plants down?
Because nobody was driving.
People quit driving because they were staying at home, and fuel consumption went down like 40 to 60%. Unintended consequences. We talked about in one of our episodes about how COVID messed up the food supply with trapping things. Most food is half food's consumed in a restaurant, half's consumed at home. A lot of you had no idea that your food supply was affected by you quit driving your cars, and they quit producing ethanol because you weren't burning fuel.
Yeah.
And the byproduct quit going to the feedlots. We had to back up and punt. So
that butterfly effect. Although they did set a new cannonball run record from New York to the Portofino Inn in California because there's nobody on the
pedantic
road.
and trivial. That's what we are right here.
Got to have it all.
All right, so back to you. I just wanted to point out there's a lot of roughage still going into these cattle. Even on feed, we're converting things that nothing else is going to convert into protein.
Otherwise, it has to go in the landfill.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's going in. So great. So yeah, great graphic there. What's our next graphic?
So basically just a graphical look at some of the stuff we just talked about, but just to give people an idea, those of us playing the home game. If you're driving, again, let's be safe.
If you're driving, I'll give you the color commentary here. So a broiler chicken from time birth to harvest, 47.4 days. Just literally want to graphically show you that versus 185 days versus 608 days. How many times we could produce a chicken or a pig in the same time it takes to produce one fed steer.
We have a graphic for that.
And then to look at the feed conversion, there is efficiency in that chicken. So a lot of people would argue that they're more efficient and that pigs are more efficient at a 3-to-1 versus a 6-to-1. I just continually want to point out that in that 6-to-1 conversion rate, there are things that could not be utilized by the chicken and the hog. Back to the lady giving me the business at the farmer's market about only eating chickens because she's just more environmentally responsible than I am.
I'm just glad that you're over that. You've really put that behind you, and I'm proud that you've grown as a person. I can tell that that's a moment that you reflect on occasionally and just think about how you've moved past that.
I think
moment.
it's just great to point out, just the things that people come up and slap you with, and you just go, bless your heart. I mean, it just really is. But she meant, as we say, she meant well.
Right.
She had good intentions.
And I've been just
had
as guilty
good
of that.
intentions.
I go to the doctor and say, hey, I Googled this.
They love that.
They love that.
Please tell your doctor that. Please tell your doctor that.
While this is up, I think it's important to talk about, we need all these different kinds of protein. If we're going to satisfy the protein demands of the United States and continue to feed people in the manner they're accustomed to in a healthy way, and there's protein. I saw protein in a soft drink the other day. That frightens me a little bit. It makes me think maybe some of those cubes out of a Campbell's chicken soup can are in there somewhere. But let's talk about, Matt, tell me a little bit about where all these protein sources fit in the American diet.
So we definitely,
you serve all these at your restaurant, right?
So and ironically, today this hasn't always been the case, but today we consume these almost in a bar graph inverse to these timelines. We eat about 120 something pounds of chicken per person per year in the United States. We eat around 80 to 90 pounds of pork per person in the United States. And we eat about 60 pounds of beef per person in the United States, 67 in Texas. Thank you very much. Keeping the national average up. So we inversely eat because of cost and time and the ability to produce. So we do consume 2 to 2.2 pounds of chicken for every pound of beef that we consume because it's cheaper to produce. It is more efficient. There's a lot of marketing around that that it's healthier or what have you.
But I don't think we could, even if we wanted to, we couldn't produce enough beef
we
to
couldn't.
just meet the protein demands of the United States.
You're trying to get me to say something nice about chickens. And that's
you do sell them. I've watched it happen.
Not proud of it, but I sell them.
But yeah, I think it's important to note there that as beef centric as both of us are,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I don't feed anything that doesn't have a rumen in my profession.
It's not your specialty, but
not my specialty.
But we
at
are
all.
going to acknowledge there's a place at the table, pun intended, for these proteins. And definitely believe we're still to the latest point that thinks that we should just all live on kale and
Tofu and
all that,
yeah.
right? So tofu, future episode right there, probably unless it's done right, not good for you. But even the chicken and the hog is taking crops, corn, soybean, grain, sorghum, things that we've not really live. I mean, you can only eat so many cornflakes and be healthy.
I think it's important to point out there too that the corn, if you drive through Iowa, 99% of the corn you drive past, which is everything you drive past in Iowa, unless it's a soybean field,
Yes.
that corn is yellow dent corn.
That is popcorn.
That's
not
not
sweet corn.
Not sweet corn. It's not for human consumption.
Not corn on the cob.
Could we eat it? Yes. But if we were growing that for human consumption, we would pick different varietals to grow for human consumption. Same thing goes for the soybeans. If you like my daughter does, edamame, that's too much work for me. I just want to eat something, and I'm not much of a legume guy. But if you like that sort of thing, they didn't go out into South Dakota into somebody's bean field and pick that out of their regular commodity bean field out there. That's a whole different.
I've met a guy that the big soy sauce company. This guy, he was in Minnesota, huge farmer, and I didn't realize this company. They're all organic soybeans for this, but it was a specific soybean that he raised for soy sauce.
Oh.
It was them. It may have been those guys. And he was one of a handful of farmers that raised those specific. So again, to your point, when agriculture, we select things very specific. We're very intentional.
I don't think a lot of people know if you eat sriracha hot sauce, it recently went from red to green. That's because, look that up. It's really interesting why it went from red to green. But basically they lost suppliers and they couldn't get the red peppers anymore, and they could only get the green peppers.
I'll have to look into that.
That's a really interesting little story.
Rooster sauce.
And it's an interesting story about why those suppliers weren't their suppliers anymore. I won't spoil that, but look that up.
I'll look that up. Maybe it's a future episode.
Might be.
Take a drink. All right. Well, that's great. I think we have got a couple more graphics to get through here. This great job creating these graphics. You're such a great graphic designer.
ChatGPT. Thank you, man.
I wouldn't have told that on myself. But yeah, so here, dress pounds at harvest, what you get out of an animal versus those dress pounds per day of production. That's a great number.
I think it's important to balance all that stuff out too, and it's a good way to look at that on this slide, and to remember too that we don't just raise one broiler chicken. I mean, the average chicken house has how many thousand?
20,000
in one chicken house.
20,000
Most people have got
house.
5 or 6 of those if they have
Minimum.
one. So again, the scale in which we can raise these animals and the inputs and the way that we can have labor's always going to be the most challenging input on any of this stuff. And so finding people that know how to take care of chickens, if we can spread that one person out over that many more chickens, and I'd have to do some research on that. I would think far and away, a broiler chicken operation, the person to chicken ratio is way different. At a feed yard, 50,000 head feed yard, we might have at most 50 employees, full-time employees that aren't all there at the same time at that feed yard. And so you get many fewer employees per animal at the swine barns and at the chicken barns than you would.
They probably have 4 employees for 150,000 chickens versus 50 employees for 60,000 cattle.
Yeah, definitely. So again, I'm not trying to tell people that, well, maybe Matt is, but most of us aren't trying to tell you the chicken's bad. I eat a fair amount of chicken. Pork's pretty cheap these days. Being the cheap SOB that I am, I eat quite a bit of pork too. So I just want everybody to have the full picture.
Yeah, no, this is great. I just don't understand. And to see how many pounds per day produce. This is the one I asked you to create because I really was really wanted to show you how many chickens you could produce, how many pigs you could produce in how many times. So in the same amount of time it takes me to produce one fed steer. If I did one, when one was harvested, I started another. We could do 12.8 rounds of chickens. We could do 3 and a third rounds of pigs in the same time it takes to produce 1 pound, one beef steer. It's just it's just a longer journey. It's just a longer journey to get there. It's a bigger animal. There's, like I said, there's a lot of the efficiencies of things we're converting, but it is really interesting. One of the interesting things that I had pointed out to you that it wasn't until 1980 that the whole beef carcass became worth as much per pound or more than the pork carcass. So trends in American consumption and production. So several things happened there. We got vertical integration heavily influencing the chicken business in the 70s and then the pork business in the 80s. So those probably drove towards pushing those costs down. And then as time equivalent, labor got more expensive, grains got more expensive, the time coefficient is going to come into play on this, right? So as labor as a percentage of the production goes up, more labor intensive to produce a cow than a chicken, as you pointed out, as you go from $5 an hour to $10 an hour to $15, $20, $25 an hour, there's an exponential factor there where those proteins that require more labor, hours of labor, they're going to become more expensive. So I don't know what all the factors are. I'd like to deep dive into that, but that was the point, 1980, when beef became more expensive than pork.
When we've talked a lot about cow population as being a major driver of how valuable beef is these days. And I think if you look at that graph, there was a pretty major downturn in the 60s and 70s in that cow population. So we saw a decrease in the number of cows, which is still far and above the number of cows we have today, but also an improvement in genetics. Not nearly to the point we are today, but we were starting to see that turn into more efficient cattle, better cattle, that sort of thing.
I looked at that number up, but I believe it was 1964 comes to the back of my mind as the peak year, the most mother cows we ever had in the United States. And then there was another peak that happened in there in the 70s where we kind of dropped off because it's usually a 7 to 12 year cycle on the beef deal. And when we hit that next peak, it wasn't quite as high as 64, but we've never seen those numbers since.
No. And never will.
Never seen those numbers since. So we are raising bigger cattle, more efficient cattle, but as far as total number of animals out there. The good old days are over.
Were they the good
For
old
the
days?
numbers.
I mean,
My granddad always said maybe the good old days weren't so good.
yeah. I mean, when we think about it from an efficiency standpoint, when we think about it from what we do with what we're given, from animal welfare standpoint, I think all of that stuff, I think we're in way better shape today than we were in the 70s and 80s or the 60s, et cetera.
I promise you, if I had to be a feeder calf and go through a cell barn, I would rather go through our harvest facility. I'd rather go take my licks for that 24-hour period at cell barn today than I would in the 70s and 80s.
You would take a lot more literal licks in
I
the
would like
70s.
a lot less licks. I would be provided more shade, more cover, more feed, more water. And then I would, at that harvest facility, I'd have the absolute best handling and humane harvest that you can have. So 100%, if I got to choose when I lived my feeder steer life, I would choose that today over the quote unquote good old days.
One more point on this slide real quick is I think it's really interesting that it's inversely proportional, the number of turns and the number of animals that we can produce out of that. That's directly proportional. But, one beef animal, we can produce far fewer beef animals in that time than we can chickens, and that's why we produce so many more chickens. And our good friend Ian can quote off the top of his head how many chickens we kill on a daily basis in the United States, and it's a staggering number. But
now we're going to have to. Well, you've mentioned Ian again.
I'm surprised he didn't run through the door. Just by
I
saying
don't
his
tell him
name.
when we record these things because he's allowed. He'd be interjecting. We'll let him come. We're going to let him come one day.
Yeah,
we'll have to
do
get
that.
written permission from his boss. We'll let him. That will be that would be
You
entertaining.
and I can just relax for the whole episode and just let him take it.
I'll
just be able to put my feet
be
up.
special with a K, right there.
Definitely. So
We'll
I
get
think
him a taller stool though, so he can be up here with
I
us.
can't throw many rocks at him on that. And then I think we had one more slide after this one that we were going to talk about. Is this just kind of a wrap up?
Yeah, this
takeaways?
just kind of put a bow on, the efficiency. Now we're not even getting into the nutritional density. I will tell you that the nutritional density that's in a pound of beef far outweighs a pound of chicken, and
Future episode.
fast, good, cheap. Pick two.
That's not to say that chicken or pork aren't nutritious.
They're just not as nutritionally dense. They don't have as many amino acid diet. Beef has got a lot of great things in it, especially when we do bone-in products and beef broths. There's just a lot of great things. We're giving everybody's got a seat at the table. Tip of the hat to the efficiency of the chicken guys. I don't want to do it. I'm glad somebody's doing it. Tip of the hat to the pig guys. We raised pigs when I was a kid, and you all did too.
Yeah.
And man,
Sometimes on purpose.
they're worse than goats. They are full-time destroying everything that they can
They're
touch.
far too intelligent.
They're
I promise they're smarter than your
destructive.
dog.
just
Promise.
destructive. They're way better at they're something. And then but as we look at those, I would argue there's an inverse proportion of nutritional density, as far as moisture content and nutritional density. If you
We're gonna
what you have.
have to qualify that and talk. through
We
that.
will. I am prepared to qualify that. We'll quantify that, get into it. But hey, a whole episode on how long it takes to produce a steer is one of the things. One of the goals we wanted to bring to you is how much longer it takes to produce one animal, which is a large animal, versus amount of cycles. So I think we did a really great job there, thanks to your graphic design capabilities and your friend GP. How do you say it?
I think it's a foreign pronunciation. I think it's like that. Yeah.
But so another episode down, which means it's time to give a toast to our good friends over at Horse Soldier, which we've got a private event coming up here in a couple of months with these guys called Whiskey and War Stories. These are the 12 guys that were sent into Afghanistan after 9/11.
Oh yeah, the 12 strong guys.
And all they were supposed to do was go conquer a country. And amazing. I've heard this story before. They loaded a helicopter with just enough fuel And they got there and they had all these supplies they needed. I forget the famous helicopter division. The
night.
I'm so
160th,
sorry.
160th SOAR, not.
Yeah, we're
shout it out in a second.
going to get to you.
Night
They're
Stalkers,
awesome.
the Night
They're
Stalkers.
The Night Stalkers. They threw all their gear out. They're like, food, you're going to figure out something to eat when you get there. They threw all their gear out of the helicopter. They said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We have a refueling plane on the other side of the mountain. So what we're going to do is we're going to run, if everything goes right, we're going to run out of fuel just as we get over the mountain. Because we can't have enough fuel to get over the mountain and over to where the plane is. Then we're going to auto gyrate, and in a controlled fall, we're going to refuel and then restart the helicopter and fly you guys to where you're going.
What could
Got
go
it?
wrong?
And they're like, okay. They said, have you ever done this before? They said, no, but in theory it will work.
We've got a
But,
spreadsheet we could
So
show
that's
you.
why these guys, those are the horse soldiers, because they went into Afghanistan. We both love Corps Blund.
I was going to ask if you're going to bring up that. That's one of my
So
favorite
this
Corps
is
songs.
those guys. This is a wink and a nod to back. The cavalry is back on horses in Afghanistan post 9/11, back riding with those tribes and teaching them to fight the enemy. And they rallied these tribes. So if you want to learn more about that, be looking to come join us for whiskey and war stories. But here it's just whiskey and agriculture stories. Dr. Abney, till next week.
Matt. Another great
It's going to be
episode.
great. It's going to be awesome. Hey, guys, keep buying American products, American consumer. We need you to support American agriculture. Farmers and ranchers, keep doing what you're doing because America trusts you. I believe in you, and the world is counting on you. Brad Good, give us some magic woman as we go home and see our magic women. See y'all next week.
Thanks, folks.
So you wake up in the morning with the sun, wondering where you've been. In the night when a memory shines brighter through your every tear. You can touch it if you reach her, but you can't reach her every day. Keep you at a distance as you try to find the words to say. Magic woman gonna drag you round. Pick you up and love you down. Magic woman gonna take you higher. Gonna steal your soul and burn like fire. Magic woman gonna drag